That's all we are, is energy. And I call this my meat suit, my earthly meat suit. But um, and for those wondering, is there something on the other side? Yes, there is. There's a lot on the other side, actually. There's art, there's music, there's creation, there's everything. Everything you could ever dream, everything you could ever imagine. And a lot of where people go has a lot to do with what they believe in this lifetime.
I'm here today with Suki Park, who in 2014 was in active addiction and had a car accident where she died and had a near death experience. And Suki is here to share that with us today. Suki, thank you so much for being my guest today. I'm excited to hear about your story.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me. Um, so just start off with the story, huh?
Yeah,
Um,
tell us what happened in 2014 after your car accident.
okay. 2014, I had started therapy, and my therapist hit a nerve, and she wanted to go back to my childhood. And I have about 5 missing years of my childhood. It's been explained to me what happened, why those memories were taken from me. Um, but anyway, I did not want to face it. And I called somebody and got some um, choice of drug that I liked at the time, and started driving. Now, I started out at her house and I was going to go visit her mother in the hospital. So it should have taken me about an hour. This is in Maryland. I'm going around Baltimore Beltway into Bethesda. So about an hour. Well, all I know is my last coherent thought was, I can't believe no one's calling the police on me, because I knew I was weaving all over the road. I guess I had ingested and didn't realize that I took what I took and then took more. So at that point, I was in a full blown blackout. I was in an altered state of consciousness. Um, so that evening, um, I'm out of my car, and all I remember was I was in a state of panic. And I just kept repeating over and over again, I have to get home, I have to get home, I have to get home. And I went to grab what appeared to be the guardrail. And as I grabbed it, a hand came out from my right side and grabbed my wrist and said, "No, you need to come back to the side of the fence." Now, in that moment, I thought it was really weird, because I thought, well, fence is a really weird word. What are they talking about? And so I wanted to see who it was that had grabbed my wrist, but they would not allow me to turn all the way. So the only thing that I saw was a plaid sleeve of a shirt. And in that moment, when I saw that plaid, my mind went back to a picture of me with my grandfather when I was a little girl. So the next conscious memory I have is somebody above me asking me questions. The only thing that I can think of is that it would have been a medic. Um, Now, I had started out in Maryland and ended up somewhere in Virginia on 95 South. And that's a highly, highly traveled highway. So my actual death experience was not very long. And, time is different too. So the amount of time in my altered state of consciousness, now, this might sound a little odd to people, but I asked, um, how did I not hurt anybody? How did I not get into an accident? I left at 1 o'clock in the evening, and now it's 9 o'clock at night. So there was a very long window of time that I was gone. Now, the funny thing is I was told I actually had a step in come in and control the car for me. Um, but I'm going to go back to uh, my state of panic that I was in. And the other thing that I learned afterward was the reason for the panic was I was shown things that were to come about in my life and things that I needed to be here for. So I truly believe it was me making the decision. I don't want to stay here. I still have children here. They need me. Um, so that overall was my near-death experience. My son came to me 3 days after the car accident and said, "Mom, I love you. I don't want you to die. Will you get help?" And in that moment, I was so broken. And something just washed over me, and I said I'd had enough. And so I went to treatment, and I ended up relocating to Florida. So in that time period, not much really happened for 4 years. So I was 48 at the time of my accident. Um, and then 4 years goes by. It's just a normal life for me. You know, I'm working and doing this and doing that. And 4 years after, in 2018, I began to experience very strange things, things that would be considered paranormal. And it frightened me. I had no clue what was happening to me. I My children confronted me and said, you know, maybe you're schizophrenic, Mom. And I said, you don't just develop schizophrenia like that, Colin. You know, I just, so I didn't believe that. And it was a very scary time because I ended up having a very traumatic experience here in that time period in 2018. So I actually left Florida and I went to New Jersey and I stayed with some extended family. Now, the funny thing is I ended up at my cousin's, and his wife and I, she was a very nice gal, but we were never close. But at that time, I began sharing with her about the things that had happened with the near death experience and what was happening now. Um, and she just laughed at me. And I said, "What is so funny? This is my sanity. Like I'm losing my mind here." And she goes, "You're normal. There's nothing wrong with you." She said, "You're like me." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" Excuse me. And she said, um, "I've been psychic my entire life." So she has a very good grasp on, you know, since she was a little girl. And her mother was highly psychic as well. But she was my first earthly guide. And I was very grateful in that time to be there. And so during that time period, I ended up taking care of her father, who was in early Alzheimer's. And so Rick was a smart man. Um, he was amazing, and I really enjoyed taking care of him. He had a delusion that they could not diagnose, and I sat there one day because they had started him on a new medication. His personality changed immediately. I called my cousin and said, "You got to get him off this. I don't know what it is, but it's altered him completely." So I was just kind of talking to the universe, and I said, "You know, he has top doctors. Why can't they figure out what this is?" So the very following morning, I woke up and I went on Facebook, and there was a page. They were talking about cures for diseases and disorders. And my eyes fell immediately down to this one, and I clicked on the link, and it's called Morgellons. And it was what he had. So I asked for an answer, and I got it the very next morning. So I forwarded the video to uh, my cousin, and I said, "This is what he has." So now they can find out how to properly treat him. Um, anyway, you know, it was that a miracle to me? Yeah, that was definitely a miracle. I mean, he's been seeing doctors for years, but um, anyway, so just to kind of fast forward a little bit, I stayed in Jersey for a few months, and I came back down to Florida. But while I was there, I had commented on a missing person, and somebody answered and sent me a private message. So I immediately started getting like visuals and downloads of information, and I was asking her. So all the information I was getting was correct. I was hitting everything right, and I was verifying it with my cousin. But that was interesting. I won't go into detail about that, but she still has not been found, unfortunately. Um, there's a lot of things that I can talk about. And when I first met with you, one of the things that came to me was in the time that I was in New Jersey. I happened to end up at my cousin's alone one night, and I was standing at her kitchen table, and I wasn't thinking anything in that moment. And all of a sudden, I heard these words: "Do you want to know what it feels like to be God?" And in that moment, I felt everything of everybody in the universe: the pain, the anguish, the joy, the love, the fear, every emotional response that a human could have, the prayers. I ended up in a crumpled heap on the floor, begging for mercy on mankind. One of the things that's a little daunting with having psychic gifts and abilities is that you see a lot. You see the darkness, a lot of darkness. And so the way I've chosen to, I mean, I was asked this question: I give these gifts to you. How can you use them to benefit mankind? And so I kind of backtracked through my history, and I had a weird obsession with serial killers. I used to study them and was very into forensics. So um, that's what I choose to do. And I've tried to get that out to the community. And unfortunately, I mean, I've walked straight into uh, police stations. I've walked straight up to police officers and told them who I am, and or what I'm capable of, and who should I contact. And I get laughed at a lot. But I know my truth, so I stand in that. Um,
Do you think when you had your near death experience, it kind of opened something up to the other side for you? Or was this something that you had your whole life?
if I go back through my childhood, there were a lot of things. I do believe I was an empath as a child. Um, but what I grew up in with Catholicism, we were very Roman Catholic. I'm also adopted. I'm the only one adopted out of 6 children. So I felt very out of place to begin with there. Um, and I was always very in tune to things that were going on around me. But I know, you're little, you don't know what an empath is. So I think due to the religious stuff that my parents enforced on us, really shut it down for me. And again, there were things that happened in my childhood that were very traumatic. And I asked, why were these taken from me? And they said it was to protect you until you were old enough to deal with the emotional aspect of those traumas. And I said, wow, that took a long time, because it was 52 when that happened. And a floodgate of memories came through. But
Maybe your experience was planned to kind of wake you back up or to kind of bring these gifts back to you. Do you think that was the case?
yeah, yes. And I've got to say this, and I have said this from day one after that death experience. I almost feel like I didn't come back as myself. So why would I feel like that? Like, did I come back as like a future enlightened self? Um, but unlocking these abilities. I do a lot of astral projection, and I meet with my guides at night. And they have been the ones who, angels, guides, whatever people perceive beings of light to be. And they've worked with me closely on honing and controlling the abilities instead of it controlling me. Because early on, I didn't understand that I had spirits that were using me to send messages to their loved ones. And I wasn't in the awareness of it until I stopped one day and I said, why do I keep checking up on these people? I don't even know them. Like, what's going on? And it dawned on me. And I said, you're not allowed to do that. You have to ask. People want answers to why certain people wake up to these abilities. And a lot of it has to do with evolution, to be honest with you, and our DNA. I mean, I've done so much studying uh, in quantum physics and how energy works. And that's all we are, is energy. And I call this my meat suit, my earthly meat suit. But um, and for those wondering, is there something on the other side? Yes, there is. There's a lot on the other side, actually. Um, a song comes to mind by Danny and Lizzie, Dancing in the Sky. And that song always gives me goosebumps. But if anybody knows that song or doesn't know it, go listen to it again. It's beautiful. There's art, there's music, there's creation, there's everything. Everything you could ever dream, everything you could ever imagine. And a lot of where people go has a lot to do with what they believe in this lifetime. Do they believe in heaven where you spend eternity with your family? I mean, just on a humorous note, I don't like much of my family, so why would I want to spend eternity with them? But anyway, um, it's I definitely came back different. That's all I know. And I think I came back to make a difference in the way that I'm trying to, and that's to help with cold case files. I just started on a case out of Cape Town, South Africa. A little 6-year-old girl went missing. And the gentleman that reached out to me, I hit so many things on the head when it came to um, the physical location and surrounding areas. But I would have to say that has been my calling since I've come back. I questioned a lot. Why me? I got very angry with the universe for a period of time. I said, this is too much. Like, I can't. I act as a guide for people in their early awakening and ascension, as we call it, um, because it can lead you to insanity. It can lead you to depression. It can lead to a lot of things. And I'm going to tell you outright right now, many of the people that are on all these antidepressants and meds for bipolar and schizophrenia have abilities. It's just driven them to that point. And I'm not saying there are not true cases of mental illness. I don't ever discount that, but it's sad. It's sad to see that in the psychic community. Um, all I know is my life has been very different. I've lost a lot of people in my life because of this, which makes me very sad. But I also understand it's unbelievable, some of the things that I have been able to do for people to connect them with loved ones.
I want to go back to your near death experience for a minute where you saw your grandfather.
Mhm.
What was like I guess I just want to go more into detail about that near-death experience. When you saw your grandfather, were you in a loving space? Was it dark? Was it light? Tell me more about
So,
that.
okay, the physical surrounding when I was out, when I was standing there, it looked like just where I would be on the highway, but there was no sound, absolutely no sound. And again, this is 95 major highway up and down the East Coast. We know this. Um, no sound, no nothing. And when I felt the hand touch me, I really didn't feel anything other than being told it's not your time. It wasn't like stern. That space of time was so short because that's really all I remember. Now, I did have an experience a few years ago, about 2.5 years ago. I was very, very upset one night and I was just crying. So sad. My heart was just, I felt like it was breaking. And I'm going to tell the story, and I'll probably cry as I'm doing now because it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had in my life. Um, I was laying in my bed crying and just sobbing. And all of a sudden, my entire room filled with what I can only describe as iridescent glitter. And in that iridescent glitter, all of a sudden, two eyes formed, and they were the bluest blue. There's no description for the blue of the eyes that I saw. The next thing I saw was a hand come out of this glitter, and I distinctly got that it was a female energy. And she cupped my face and said to me, "These are counted." And she took her hand and put it like right here where my tears were, and she took her hand away. And that's when she said, "These are counted." And she opened her hand, and every one of my tears was a blue diamond. When you want to talk about feeling absolute, I'm sorry, absolute love, absolute acceptance, peace. And she still comes to me, not that intensely, because since she's made her presence known. And I don't know who that was. Those two experiences I just told you about were probably two of the most intense that I've had. Um, and I've gotten to a point in my life where I am very grateful for this. I do have my days. I call them my Lieutenant Dan days. And I'm sitting on the mask going, "Yep, you show up." Um, but this world is not what we think it is. There are so many different worlds, dimensions. Um, and to think about all that could really blow your mind.
You said that you meet your guides in out-of-body experiences.
Yes.
Do you induce these experiences on your own, or are they just happening to you spontaneously?
Sometimes I go in with the intent of meeting, and sometimes as I'm meditating, it'll just happen. And it's really quite odd because it's almost like going through a portal. I remember when I first started meditating, I said to my friend, I said, "It's really odd because when I do this, it's like I'm going through this tunnel and I see lights that are just flashing different colors. And then sometimes I'll see faces or animals." And she's like, "That's so cool. I wish I could do that." I said, "I don't understand it, but that's what happens." So a few years ago, about the time that I woke up to my new reality, as I call it. I had what I would call, some would call a dream. I believe it was an astral. I remember I was running in my dream, and I was running from something. I felt like I was being chased. And I heard a voice say to me, find the house and get on the second floor. So I'm running and I'm running. It's just pitch black where I'm running. So I come upon this house, but it looks very flat. It's not like 3D, right? So I see that there's a second floor, and I say, well, there are no stairs. How do I get up there? And they said, all you have to do is jump. So I jump and I'm on the second floor, and then I hear, go to the spiral staircase. And now, mind you, at this time in my dream, on my age, which was about 52, 53, and I find the spiral staircase, I climb up it, and there's a hatch, and I open it, and I go into this room and I sit down. But as soon as I sit down, I'm 8 years old. And my eyes are adjusting to the darkness. So next thing I know, I see shelves that are appearing, bookshelves. And then books begin to appear. And I just asked out loud, what is this place? And I was told the library. And I said, well, what is the library? And they said, it is the Hall of Records of time, of history. And so I didn't really think anything of it. It was just kind of matter of fact. I was told that's where I was. And then to go one step further, I was told to find the window in space. So the next thing I know, I felt like I was traveling through space, and there's stars everywhere. And I see this white window. It's just like a light coming out in the middle of the stars. And I go up to the window and I look in, and I'm told to come in. So I go into the room, and the next thing I know, there's somebody there. I'm not quite sure who it is, but I'm looking around me and I realize that everything is transparent in this room. I can see out into space, like the stars, the planets, the galaxies. You can see everything. And I asked where I was and why I was there. And they said, you're here because you have access to the Akash. And I didn't really know at that time what the Akash was. And so through studying and research, I found out that the Akash holds every human's recorded history, past, present, and future. And so as a psychic medium channel, whatever you want to call me, all the labels, when I do channel work, I'll go into like a slight meditation prior to a meeting with someone. And like I meditate for about 10 minutes, and I come back, and all I do is I kind of nod my head and say, okay. But it's kind of funny because what I see in the Akash is kind of forgotten as I come back to my body. But when I meet with the people, that information has been what I call downloaded. So it's here for me to access. And when I meet with the people, that's when I can access information for them or connect them to their loved ones. And that is an amazing experience when people feel the love of passed on loved ones. I just got goosebumps everywhere. It's a beautiful experience. And I've had experiences with many passed on people. And I'll share one in particular. I was dating a man, and he had a friend who had cancer. And for whatever reason, she didn't really care for me too much. And but what she didn't know was what I was doing behind the scenes, because as she was going through chemo, she had lost her hair, and I'm a hairdresser, so I know what she's going through to a degree, right? And so I would be out looking for hats and scarves or wigs and things. And I heard she was in the hospital, and that was a Friday night. And Sunday evening, I was laying in my bed, and I wasn't really doing anything. And all of a sudden, it was like I just went zoom, and I astraled, and I was standing next to her hospital bed. And I was just looking down at her. And then the next thing that happened was like I zoomed out, and I'm remote viewing from here, and I see her husband who's passed on, and now he's standing next to her hospital bed. And I had never met her husband. He had passed on way before I met her. But I just had a distinct feeling that that was who that was. And then he disappeared. And the next thing I know, she's at the end of her bed, and she's just staring at her body. And I just distinctly remember saying, "It's okay." The following morning, I woke up, and as soon as I woke up, I saw her face like huge in my mind. It was just like she was everywhere. And she was beautiful. She was smiling. She was beaming. She was happy. And I just looked in amazement. And the next thing I knew, she was standing next to her husband, and she was in her wedding gown, and he was in his military attire. And I looked at her and I said, "Why are you coming to me?" And she said, "Because I wanted to apologize." And I said, "For what?" And she said, "Not knowing your heart." So she never saw while she was here what I did or what I was trying to do. But on the other side, she knew where my heart was for her the entire time through her process. Um, so that was a really, really beautiful experience for myself personally.
Is astral travel or out of body experiences, is that something that anybody can do?
You can, but my suggestion would be to be heavily meditated and protected prior to, because it is like opening a portal. And if you're not familiar with it, you can pick up outside energies and come back with them. So I do a lot of meditation to clear out my chakra systems, as well as to kind of what I say, shed the goo of the day away. I do Palo Santo, things like that. A lot of mental imagery as well is important for me. So I would recommend starting out slow, but making sure that you're in spiritual alignment prior to doing it. I wasn't in spiritual alignment when I first started doing it, because and I had started meditating prior to my awakening. So I didn't realize at the time that's what I was doing. And whether you believe that energies can follow you back and kind of cause a little havoc, it can. But when you realize, people ask me, because I have seen a lot of darkness, right? And I've seen people's eyes go jet black, where I know something is there that has a presence in their body that shouldn't be there. And people ask me, "Well, how can you deal with that?" And I say, because I know that I'm a child of the light, and there is nothing that can harm me. And for people who, buy into the demonic realms scenario, as I call it, they're just low energies. But again, anytime an energy has approached me that I know is not of the light, I will look at it and I will say, "You have no power here. You have no authority here. So leave you must." And I know for a fact I have had guardians protect me, because I have a lot of orb activity around. And I was laying here one night, and I saw this black orb coming, and it was coming from my left, and I looked up, and the next thing I knew, I saw a white orb that came in, stood between me and it, and that thing just shot off. So I prepare myself as much as I can for those things that happen. And I don't know, I just don't fear death anymore. You know, I think most people's issues with death are how they're going to go. And, you know, everybody wants a peaceful death, but doesn't always happen that way. But all I know is I died, I came back different, and I try to use it to benefit people and mankind in every way that I can.
And I want to touch on you coming back different as well. You feel like when you were driving that you may have had a walk-in who was controlling the car for you. Do you feel like that same walk-in stayed with you?
I think that walk-in has been with me since childhood. I think that was the walk-in that came in for me and took the memories of the trauma for me. And it's really odd to think that anything or anyone would choose to do that for someone. But in my heart of hearts, I believe it. So that there's just for me no other explanation. I don't even know how to explain it. Just feeling different. Um, who knows? I could have merged with, you know, future self or who knows?
I was going to ask
I
you if
mean,
you felt like your walk-in maybe was and someone and I got this idea from another near-death experiencer where they had a walk-in, but they felt like that walk-in was a more advanced version of themselves, like part of their higher self.
just a wiser version of you. Like it would almost be like adding 20, 30 years to the wisdom level that you would have, you know? And even, and it's more, you know, this is funny. In my early ascension, I woke up one morning and I had not used my phone all night. And I wake up and my phone is on a word, and the word was GAC. And I've looked for that word again in the dictionary everywhere and I can't find it. So, and I believe I screenshot it, but the definition was to come from love, empathy, and compassion. And I thought, who the heck took my phone and looked this word up? That was like, it was lit up when I woke up on that word. And I think, you know, you asked, what's the final message that you received, right? And I jokingly said it in a manner in another interview was, you know, don't be a jerk, and go back to that word GAC. Come from love, compassion, and empathy for your fellow man, because that's where all of our issues are going to be solved. And to send love, you know, even when you're angry, like there's something that I practice. If I'm angry with somebody, I'll just envision my heart just putting out like pink vibrating love energy towards them so that I'm not angry anymore. But it is important to come from compassion for people. And I've been led to do specific types of work. And I'm shown why I do this kind of work, but I do elder care companion work here in Florida, and we have a lot of elderly people here. So anyway, I ended up working for a company, and they paired me with a woman who's 66 and has ALS. It's really difficult to see what she has to go through. I also wonder all the time, like if I were her, would somebody be compassionate enough to do this for me? And so obviously my answer is yes. I also work with a gentleman who has Huntington's, and it's hard work. It can be rewarding, it can be tiring and grueling. But yes, I do think I came back as a wiser version of myself. So maybe I just kind of merged with that energy, you know, since that's all we really are on the other side.
If my viewers wanted to reach out to you, how can they find you, Suki?
You can find me on Facebook, Suki Park. You can private message me. I do offer tarot readings. I work with white energy, but mostly if there's anybody out there in Facebook land who needs help finding missing people, I'm always there to see what I can see. So basically, the only platform you will be able to find me is Facebook. I choose not to the other platforms because it's just too much to try to look after.
Well, thank you so much, Suki, for not just for sharing your story on this interview, but also for all the work that you're doing to help others. It's, I think a lot of near-death experiencers come back with a feeling of, or with a passion for service to others. And I think you're
We
living that.
do. And I just actually, it's funny you're saying that because I just posted something on my Facebook yesterday about how these gifts and abilities come from a higher power and a higher source. And I am a conduit. And apparently, when I heard the knock of 3, I answered and said, okay. Anyway, I appreciate you having me on. And again, if anybody needs help, reach out.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.